We're breaking down walls, tearing apart the lies. Together we'll stand, watch the whole world rise. Faith transcends boundaries, uniting every heart. In this movement of love, we're all taking part.
Guys, welcome back to the 5th episode of the Vision Podcast. Man, this is a monumental moment. This is an opportunity that I didn't even see coming. We have our first official sponsorship, and that is through Path Recovery. So now I can officially say this episode brought to you by Path Recovery. And in this episode, we're going to be talking specifically about some of the things in recovery, especially with addiction and mental health, things like that. And I'm honored, and I hope that you would join me in welcoming our guest, Tyler and Bram. They are 2 of the 3 founders of Path Recovery, and they are here to not only talk about what they do, but just to help us understand some of what the inside of the addiction world looks like, how we balance our faith with some of the things that we deal with in recovery. You know, because me, even myself, coming from addiction of alcoholism and heroin addiction, you know, faith was just kind of a scarce thing for me, and I didn't really know how to integrate it into my life. But over the years and learning who Jesus is and learning how God can work in so many different ways in addiction, I've just been able to really have a better understanding of what recovery in a holistic sense looks like. And so thank you again, guys, for being here.
Thank you for having us.
It's really an honor
happy to
for
be
you
here.
to show up and show out, guys. I mean, not only are you coming on here to help empower the vision, guys, but you are supporting what we're doing in a way that's going to help us empower other men. And so that goal in itself is immense and invaluable. So thank you. And I'm so honored that you're here.
Amen.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, without further ado, I want to ask what do you do at Path, and why have you gotten into the recovery world, right? What has led you to be where you are now?
Tyler, I'll let you kick it off, man.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Tyler, and I'm an alcoholic and drug addict. No, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you, Daniel, again for the opportunity. So my passion for recovery kind of stems from me being in recovery myself, hence the identifying like I was in a 12-step meeting.
Yeah.
I found and fell in love with recovery because through the process of trying to find my path to God, I was able to find my truth. And that was hard in the beginning, but I fell in love with that process and fell in love with a life of recovery because of the things that I got by putting God and recovery first in my life. And it wasn't easy. And then, you know, after being in recovery for several years, I found out that passion, you know, I wanted to implement into my daily life and as employment.
Yeah.
And I found a route to do that. And I've worked in and out of the treatment industry since 2017. And when I got introduced to Bram, which is a really long, weird story, but it was a total God thing, where some guys that I met in church roughly 10 years ago, you know, I got sober in 2014 and I met them at church and had dinner with them a few times, went to a couple of concerts with them, some Christian rap artists, actually, Andy Mineo, shout out.
Yeah.
And but then weird thing is they had reached out and asked me to come to breakfast, and I thought that they were going to be introducing me into someone that they might want me to help. And it turned out being introduced to Bram and his wife Kenya and this dream and vision of Path Recovery and their vision and their heart of what they wanted the program to be aligned with where my heart was at. And so that's kind of how I came into play and joined Path as director of programming. And so I do a lot with client services, marketing, business development, but also just my experience in the industry, but my personal experience and lived experience in addiction and recovery. I feel like the role was going to be fulfilling to me, but I also felt that I would be an asset into being able to help meet clients where they're at and give them a glimpse of what recovery can do for you.
Yeah, no, amen. Yeah, you have to have, especially in the recovery world, you have to have some kind of semblance of understanding of what someone is going through to be able to even begin to relate to what they have going on, you know? And so thank you for what you're doing, man. Thanks for
course.
So Bram, how did you begin this journey? I know.
Yeah. So what's up, everybody? My name is Bram Kane, and I'm the executive director over at Path. And Daniel, thank you for having us on your podcast today. Truly appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. And when you asked us if we would sponsor it, it was almost like just an immediate yes, because I could just feel your passion, to help another men and what you do. So thank you for what you do. I didn't realize you were in the witness protection program and this was in the middle of nowhere, but I'm glad we found it. You could have put this a little further out. Like, it would have been nice if we had to drive maybe a little further to get here.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we found it. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So I had a vision for treatment, right? So it starts out from when I was a little kid, right? My whole family is in recovery. My father, he was a dry drunk growing up. He would beat us and he wasn't the greatest guy. Let's just say that. But he was loving. I don't want to say that my dad wasn't loving. He's definitely a loving person. He was just dry. He came from Vietnam. He did 5 tours, and we grew up sort of like in the military lifestyle. But my father wasn't really around much. He sort of left us, and he traveled with the military. Instead of us traveling around, we were sort of with our mom just in one location. And I have memories, and I can remember just being little growing up and starting to see my brothers use when they were real young. And so I just followed in their footsteps, as big brothers. I just wanted to do what they were doing. So I started to get into things when I was very young. I went into treatment for the first time when I was 13 or 14 years old. I walked in the door at the treatment center, and I remember my therapist, Liz, and she was like, back then there was no adolescent treatment center, so this is a psych ward for kids, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I don't know." She's like, "You're a drug addict." And that seed was planted. And I was like 13 or 14 years old. And I can remember getting a big book back then, but I was just like, I was a child. I had no idea what to even do.
Yeah.
But I stayed sober for like 6 months or 7 months or something. I went back home, got with my old friend, and started using again, whatever the case may be, in and out of treatment. And then when I was 21, I finally found a place in Palm Beach called Sunset House, which was a nonprofit organization. And they allowed me to come into their program, and they really just started to teach me the basics, man. Like how to wake up in the morning and brush my teeth, make my bed, cook for myself, just the basic stuff, Back then I had hair, how to like wash it and comb it, and just like do the basic things in life that kind of I didn't know, when I was 21 years old. And I stayed sober for a very long time after that, and I got heavy into working a program and stuff. And then I went back out again. I did go back out after about 9 years. I went back out again, and then I got back into recovery again, and that's sort of my story. And I've been sober now for a while, and I wanted to do something different that nobody's really done, right? Because like when I look at treatment centers and I think of treatment, I think of a place that so it depends what it is, right? If it's inpatient, 'cause I've been to both. I've been to inpatients and outpatients. If it's an inpatient center, I think of like white walls with some like splashes of yellow and blue, maybe.
Yeah, just a hospital.
Just
scene,
like a
right?
hospital type setting with hospital beds, a couple of people in a bedroom, your shower, you walk to your shower with your slippers, and it's like, and then I think of outpatient treatment and some of the sober livings that I lived at, and they were just like, it was like you would go to group for however many hours you need to do, whether you're in like a PHP or an IOP program, maybe you get some lunch, and then you kind of just go home and fend for yourself, and they sort of leave you. And so like my idea was to take sort of a hybrid of inpatient, outpatient, plus the absolutely amazing experience that I had at Sunset House. I can't say enough about them, but the experience that I had there. And I wanted to do like a blend of like this profit meets nonprofit meets God, right? And we're not a faith-based program. We are a program that is a 12-step program. And we're based on the anonymous programs, but we do believe in our ultimate mission, which is helping people find a power greater than themselves, right? And that power can restore us to sanity, and that's the only power that could restore me to sanity, was finding that higher power for myself. And so what we do at Path Recovery is we do things like hiking, we go fishing, we take the guys out to do outings every day. And it's not just sitting in a group room for 5 hours, getting some lunch, watching a movie, and we just want to really get them out there into the world to do to have those different experiences. We'll do some equine therapy, some music therapy, art therapy. We have sound healing, yoga, acupuncture. So it's a mixture of everything, and it's the whole body, right? It's the 8 dimensions of well-being is what our program is based on. And we're super excited for it. And that's our mission is to just get people to realize once you get into recovery, life isn't over. That's when life starts.
Yeah.
Life starts when you get into recovery, because my life was over when I was out there in the streets shooting dope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's when my life was over. And I didn't see it like that maybe at certain points, but there's a time out there in the streets where it's just not fun anymore, and there is a better way to live in recovery. And so that's our mission is to just show people that it's not the end, it's actually the beginning, and that there is a power greater than ourselves. And that if we find that power, there is some hope.
Yeah.
There is some hope.
Oh, that's great, man. That's so good. I'm glad that you pointed that out, because I know, especially in my early recovery, I'm like, this is boring. I'm not getting high. I'm not out running the streets. I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting at home, maybe going to work, coming home, where's the fun in that, So but I have learned over the years, man, that there's so much more rich experiences that you can have while you're being sober, while, experiencing that recovery journey, man. And just like my family, my kids, my job, it's all just so much more enriching and fulfilling than any of that stuff on the street was. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in too on that. Like when I came into recovery, I was 23 years old, and I had been court ordered as a juvenile to attend some 12-step recovery meetings. And for me, recovery at that time, and even when I got sober at 23, was a bunch of old white dudes holding hands, talking about Jesus and their feelings, and that wasn't attractive to me.
Yeah.
Right. And so, unfortunately, a lot of what I see in my experiences is nobody wakes up and decides yes, I want to wreck my life to the ground and be a drug addict and struggle with anxiety and depression, right? It was a progressive thing. And I was driven to a place of being open to recovery out of consequences. And even more than that, the jail and stuff had become a normal for me. The treatment centers had become a normal for me, right? But it was what had happened, up here in my head, and being spiritually disconnected and having all these fears of not being good enough and all these things that drove me into being receptive to help. But I wasn't attracted to the help that I thought was available. And so these things that Bram's talking about, the hiking and the outings and thing, builds this community. When I first got clean and sober, I got sober with about 8 or 10 guys who we all had the same goals, and we were all working on ourselves in the same way. And so it fostered this community and the first healthy relationships that I probably ever had in my entire life. Right. And so I didn't have to do that alone. And so creating a program that's different in what it offers, but also that sets a tone for hey, we're community based. We're inclusive here. And dude, when I got sober, I didn't know what I liked to do for fun. Yeah. It was a process and kind of relearning, again, going back to finding my truth, who I was, what I really liked to do, things like that. I get lost in addiction. It was the main part of my life. Every day I woke up and it was, what am I going to get? How am I going to get it? Where am I going to get it? What do I need to do? Who do I need to take advantage? Whatever I needed to do, right? Yeah. But then I had to relearn, wow, I'm bored now. I can't get high. What's next?
It's almost like treatment centers also are in a box, right? It's okay, you're going to come in, you're going to go to these 12-step meetings, you're going to get a sponsor, you're going to work the steps, you're going to do it like this. And if you don't do it like this, you're going to go get high. Or you're going to come into this group. You're going to believe in Jesus. If you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to go out and get high. Right? Like, that's not how it works, man.
Yeah.
This is progress. It's not perfection. And recovery takes time. And it's something that you have to learn. And every single person's recovery is different. And that's really what we want to foster, is that, like, recovery is different for everybody. Right? What works for you may not work for you. What works for you may not work for me. You know, what works for me may not work for the other guy. And by being able to get people out there into these outings, then all of a sudden Daniel's with us and we're on a hike. And every time Daniel hiked, he liked to eat mushrooms, right? And he thought the only way that he could hike is if he was eating mushrooms and drinking beer with a couple of buddies. And now all of a sudden Daniel's out hiking and there's no mushrooms and no beers, but he's around support. And he's like, man, this is actually something fun that I actually really like to do.
Yeah.
Right. And then you realize at that point, and that's when you have those like breakthroughs, right? That's when I have my breakthroughs, at least, is when I realize, oh man, I can actually go to a football game. That's something that I'm dying to do. I'm dying to take these guys to like a football game on a Sunday or like a Preds game, and like be out there with them and show them, like, look, you don't have to be drunk. You don't have to be high. You don't have to have these feelings provided from outside sources to make you feel good. Like, this feeling of good, it comes from within. It comes from within, and it comes from, for me, finding a connection to a higher power that's greater than myself. And when you're first getting into recovery, whatever that higher power is, so be it. I make fun of Tyler, but it's true. Like, this guy prayed to a soda machine?
A Coke machine.
Yeah, a Coke machine was his higher power for like 7 of his 10 years. No, I'm just joking.
At least 3. At least 3. Until the prayers became meaningless, right? And praying to a Coke machine as my spirituality and my recovery evolved. Praying to this Coke machine didn't make sense. And I did it just by being a 23-year-old smartass. Like, my first question into recovery was, how can I work a program if I don't believe in God? Because that's what higher power, czar of the heavens, spirit of the universe, like all these terms. And I didn't feel like I was good enough for God, if there was one, right? And so at first it was just like, oh, you can make anything your higher power. And so I made the Coke machine my higher power, but I didn't realize until after I was about a year sober and I'd had a few spiritual experiences to where God showed himself to me through people in recovery, right? But like, me saying that Coke machine my higher power sounds silly, but it was really me being like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to live my life. Right. I don't know if there is a God. All I know is I don't feel good enough, and I've wrecked my life to the ground because of drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
But people's message didn't have depth and weight, and I had put myself on this island to where I felt like nobody understood the way that I felt. I'll just quit drinking. Don't get a DUI again. Like, it sounds really good, but I'm powerless over those substances without having something greater than me, right? Left to my own devices, like the disease of more, man. It could be more of anything.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. It comes down to like that God-shaped hole.
Yeah.
Right? And so like when I had first gotten sober, it was like, what am I going to fill this hole with? So I filled, this is pre-marriage, by the way, just want to throw that out there. So I filled it with everything. I filled it with women, right? Then I tried filling it with food. Then I tried filling it with, gambling and going to casinos or, whatever it may be, anything that could fill that hole that I had, that void that was left behind from where those drugs were, from where they, because that's where I felt the most at home. That was my love, man. I love drugs, dude. I loved them, and it was like, it was a marriage that I never wanted to, or thought that I was going to get a divorce from. Like, I never thought I was going to divorce heroin.
Yeah.
I never thought I was going to divorce Xanax. I never thought I was going to divorce Adderall or cocaine or whatever it was that I was doing. So I'm a junk. I'll do anything, man. I'll smoke it, sniff it, shoot it.
Whatever you can.
Yeah. You name it. Yeah.
Too,
uppers, downers, left or right. It don't matter. Right? You give it to me, I'm taking it. Right. So like, whatever that was, right, that I never thought I was going to divorce, it left this hole behind. And I tried filling it with everything that I possibly could. Until one day I discovered, oh, wow, that big book that I was given when I was, 13, 14 years old, that's actually kind of where most of the answers come from. And those answers in that book and what that book is for is to get you to a higher power greater than yourself. That's kind of like the whole point of it.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time, and I'm probably a little bit older than you guys. And so like my journey was a long journey, and it was hard. It was hard, but I feel it with God now.
That's super important too. I don't mean to cut you off, but like something that I realized in my journey in making a connection with God was that I realized that my whole life, the booze and everything that I was chasing, that feeling, I realized after finding recovery and finding love for myself and allowing God to show himself through other people is what I was chasing the whole time through the bottle and through the dope and all the stuff that I was doing, the way I was living, is I was chasing this sense of like belonging and love, but like it was just wrecking my life. And so I got to that point where it was like, I can't live like this anymore, but I can't imagine my life without the substances that make me feel okay with me. But then the byproduct of that is like out of desperation and getting involved in recovery and meeting guys like you who were on the same path as me, I was able to find that unconditional love in a healthy way that I had looked for my entire life in all the wrong things. And when I took those things away and started filling that God-shaped hole that Bram was talking about with like recovery and meetings and fellowship and community and doing fun things sober, then I realized like, wow, love was what I was looking for the entire time. Didn't even know, right, that I was looking for love from God.
Yeah.
The unconditional love.
Yeah.
The unconditional love of God, because my God's so loving and he's so kind and he's so forgiving. And it doesn't matter where you are or where you've been. My God loves no matter what. Love conquers all, and that's really what it was, just looking for that love and that relationship. And thank you, God, for finding me. Thank me for finding. I don't know how that works, but
thank you, God, for saving us from Bram.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I love that. And just the fact that you touched on the point of that no one's journey is the same. And it's just sometimes if you've got to fill this hole with whatever it may be that's going to keep you alive, then do it until you get to a place where you can actually explore that part of you that maybe didn't know that they needed love. But how are you ever going to find out if you're out there shooting dope, if you're, sleeping under a bridge and you just don't care about life? You'll never know if you don't try and actually just do something to change the situations that you're in.
Yeah. Now it's about giving back.
Yeah.
And that's what path is, right? Because the journey is to find God, but the ultimate end goal is to be able to just give the way that God gave, love the way that God loves. Try to look in the mirror, and what do you see when you see that reflection? Like, do you see somebody who's forgiving and loving and caring? That, that's that ultimate resemblance. That's what I'm going for. I want to look in that mirror, and I don't want to scare anybody either from anything, but like, I want to look in that mirror, and if I can see Jesus in that mirror, man, that would be my ultimate and final goal personally.
Yeah.
And that's by giving back. Giving back what was so freely given to me. Because nobody's ever asked me for anything in this program, or around these programs. No one's ever asked me for anything except to be as genuine as I possibly can.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful program. It's just such a good life. So much better than it was, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's what it makes me curious of how you're going to accomplish this goal, because I think it's what you're doing is you're hitting a middle ground, which is very much needed, right? Because as you said earlier, on one hand, it's like rigid, legalistic, stick to the program. And then on the other hand, with faith, it's the same thing. It's rigid, legalistic, stick to God. It's faith only. Like, I mean, there's how are you going to achieve that middle ground of just compassion and love and understanding that there is.
And Tyler says this best. I'm going to say Tyler's quote and then let him take it from here, right? I'm going to steal it from you, but we're going to meet people where they're at. And I'll let Tyler take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about everybody's recovery looks different, but everybody's journey up until recovery looks different too. And you said something about faith. So I had a guy it was in January. I remember it. And I was at a conference and we sat down and he asked me about my relationship with God and he asked me if I trusted God because I was going through some things at the time. And I went on this spiel for like 20 minutes about faith. And then at the end of it, as he's just smiling and, looking at me and smiling, and he finally let me finish and he followed up with, well, that's great, but I didn't ask you if you had faith in God. I asked you if you trusted God. Mm. And so for me, all those words that we use in recovery, like trust and faith and gratitude, and even love and service and all those words that we use that kind of embody the definition of recovery, to me, they're all action words. And so like, how do I set that middle ground? For me is I'm going to be an example of recovery and what a sober man in recovery who walks this lifestyle looks like. And put my feet are going to match my words, right? Because my whole life I had people, again, telling me what I needed to do, but they weren't doing the same things, right? And so when I came into recovery and people were talking about faith and all these things that we do in recovery and service, I watched their feet and their actions match their words. And so for me, the middle ground, I think, how are we going to do that? By setting an example, just by using our experience, how we got from where we were to where we are now, and giving people that opportunity. And then their journey is between them and God. Like we can have this nice program and we can do all these things, but ultimately I believe that my responsibility is to make recovery attractive and give guys opportunity. That way they can, the path, the logo of path is genius because of all the different directions that we can take, but ultimately they all lead to God. But faith without works is dead. So I have to do something in between that stuff to make those actions match the words, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just planting the seed and trusting that God is going to do what he does best.
That's it.
I remember early in recovery, I was like 22 years old, and this is back in like 2002. And I sat down with my sponsor. I thought he was the greatest, and I love him to this day. But I sat down with him, right? And we like started doing our step work. We go 1, 2, and 3 real quick, right? We finish with step 3. We're like, all right, that's it. We're going to start the 4th step next and then move into the 5th, whatever, right? So we finish our 3rd step. We go out to dinner, right? It's about 4 hours, 5 hours later now. He's like, you want to go to Cheetah? I'm like, yeah, let's go to the strip club. And like, I'm just like being from Miami, that was normal. That's where I'm from, I'm from Miami. So like being from Miami, that was kind of normal, but I didn't realize it was so confusing, like how I was being led, right? Because now I know who to pick as a sponsor, obviously, what I'm looking for, what qualities I'm looking for. But when I'm young, that's what I was looking for, so everybody's path was, and I stayed sober after that. I stayed sober for 9 years. And I worked all the steps and I continued to try to fill that hole with all this other stuff, but it was just people talking, but their actions, like Tyler was just why I said that story. It's like their actions were so different from what they talked. And nowadays, if you're like, hey, let's go to Cheetah, let's go to, strip clubs, go here or there. I'm like, wait a second. Is that really like someone that I want? Number one, I'm married. Number two, I got 2 daughters that are, 19, going to be 20 and 21, right? And as a dad, do I really want to be going to the strip club? Like right. I'm a dad now. I'm 40. I'm 44 years old. It's like first of all, I'd feel horrible. I like just being my daughter's age, even looking at a girl that young. And second of all, like imagine like all the traumas, right? Like. For me, when I think about stuff like now, it's like, what are all the traumas that led those young women into be able to be up in that place and actually do that? Think of all the traumas that they had to go through and have gone through to actually get up on a pole.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah.
To just sit there and watch.
For us to just sit there and exploit it.
And then just exploit that and exploit their traumas. And it's really gross, But I tried filling that hole with that. And I understand and what made me think about that was just, Tyler saying like actually watching what people do, and that's what I want to do. I want people to hear me talk And then when you meet me, I want to show you that I'm actually living that life.
Yeah.
And I want to show myself that. I don't even want to show you that, to be honest. That's what I need to prove to myself. You know, I have nobody to prove anything to except for me and God. That's it. I love my wife, but God comes first. God comes before anything for me. And it's the same thing, kind of like, I'll get a little vulnerable. It's the same thing kind of like with porn. You know, like, what am I doing when I'm watching porn? Like it's not like I haven't done it, right? We all know it, right?
Yeah.
It's not like anybody listening to this hasn't done it. Everybody's tried it. I'd probably say 100% of people at least once
for sure
have masturbated, right? It's just life, right? So like, but when I'm looking at that, right? When I was looking at that and I was doing those, like, imagine the traumas that girl had to have gone through to put herself out there like that on the internet. You know, and it's just sad now. And that's ultimately how I got over that, like, addiction, you know, and that, like, thing was just telling myself every time that I'd watch it but I'd be like, man, and I'm being a little vulnerable right now, and I hope that's okay on this podcast. Absolutely. But I'd always, but like, coming back from that, I'd watch it now and just be like, man, these poor girls have just been through so much trauma. And here I am, like, just watching on a TV. How lame am I?
Yeah.
It's one of God's kids.
It's one of God's kids. Yeah.
We touched on that in I think 2 episodes ago with Mo Pitney about just, and it's also one of the primary outlets for sex trafficking. And so some of these girls, I mean, they're definitely experiencing trauma, but a lot of them aren't even choosing to do it. So,
right. They're being trafficked for it.
Yeah.
And you don't know.
You don't know,
man. And these are all different addictions, you know, gambling.
Yeah.
You know, gambling, I used to be heavy into gambling. My buddy was heavy into gambling. We'd just go and blow a lot of money, dude. Yeah. Trying to fill that hole.
Yeah, catch that win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, get that little rush, man.
Fill that hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not just the women, though, that deal with the shame and things like that. You know, I mean, it's a lot of, it's the guys that are dealing with it, because a lot of people won't even be vulnerable enough to even admit what you just admitted of, like, hey, I struggled with porn. Hey, I struggled with things. I know for me, you know, especially when I was getting high, I wouldn't know. The only people that knew I got high was, you know, my drug buddies and my dealer, but everybody else is like, how are you doing? I'm good, man. I'm great. You know, I'm making up lies. I'm doing all these things, you know? So I just think it's very important to be able to create a safe space for people to, at least even to get to the point of admittance that they need help in something like this, you know? And so I love what you're doing. I just want to know, like, what are you doing as, not only as a sinner, but as people who have experienced this in their own lives? Like, how are you getting out and telling people, like, hey, I'm here. I've been there. You don't have to go through that anymore. You know, how are you making yourselves that space to be open to have people come to you?
Yeah. For me, it's being a billboard, right?
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of stigma and shame that come around addiction, regardless of how you got there or what dynamic or how you grew up or whatever. You know, we were just at who were we talking with? Bram, talking about how it's so hard for people to ask for help because they're afraid of the EMS, the fire department. We were talking to the fire department about, you know, some of our programming and trying to see how we could maybe help out, because first responders, just as an example, they go through a lot of stuff, but that most civilians don't see. Same with veterans. But then it's like, how do I come forward not knowing what the consequences are going to be if I try to get help with my alcoholism, because that's how I'm self-medicating for the trauma, but am I going to get demoted or lose my job at the end of this because I went to my EAP program and tried to ask for help? And then me being young when I got here, the stigma and shame about being an alcoholic, to me, alcoholic was a man under the bridge, right? And I was an alcoholic, but I would rather be called a drug addict because I thought it was better than, right? And so for me, it's about being a voice for the voiceless. Yes, a lot of the programs that we're referring to, they're anonymous 12-step programs. And I keep that part separate out of respect for those fellowships. But when it comes to my own personal recovery, I'm loud about it. I'm loud on social media. I'm loud when I'm talking to people in the streets. I mean, I carry Narcan and I wear recovery stuff all the time because I want to make myself available for somebody who needs it. I want somebody to, if they're struggling, be like, who am I going to reach out to? Well, I don't feel comfortable going to a pastor because I don't go to church, or I don't feel comfortable, going to the police because maybe they're going to charge me, whatever the case may be, right? But then somebody might say, oh, I remember Tyler from high school. He was an absolute junkie and wrecked his life to the ground. But I see him posting stuff about recovery all the time. And he knows how to find good placement for treatment. And he knows where good quality care and community can come from. And they're going to call me because I wear it as a billboard. And my mission, and I don't believe that this is for everybody that gets involved in recovery, but I believe God put my purpose smack dab in front of me to be a voice for the voiceless and to stand up for people who are burdened with the stigma and shame of addiction.
Yeah, man. It's just, I hear just be a light.
That's
it. I hear be a light. And that may look different for a lot of people. Yeah. However, you need to stand out from the crowd and show people that, hey, this is okay. You can come to me. You can come to me.
Yeah. And I'm out there like, kind of just like Tyler, I guess, in a way, but I'm a little more, I don't know, I guess not so vocal about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm out there in the streets, man. I'm literally out there in the streets. I mean, I was working on this kid for 3 weeks that we finally got into our program. And, I'd see him and I'd just say, hey, man, God loves you, And I was like, we're here if you ever need anything. Finally, 3 weeks later, he came into our doors. He has skin cancer on his head. He had trench foot. He took off, when me and Tyler went with him to the hospital, we sat with him from 4 p.m. until we finally got a social worker on the phone at 5 a.m. And we sat there with him for 13 hours, praying, loving on him, telling him that it was going to be okay, watching him sleep. Man, it was the most humbling thing ever, just seeing this kid sleep comfortably. Me and Tyler were like, we were over there in tears, man. I mean, it was pretty intense. And, just seeing someone sleep who hasn't slept comfortably because they've been sleeping on concrete for the last 2 years. This is a 25-year-old young man with his whole life ahead of him, and just being able to help somebody like that is just the most fulfilling feeling. I don't even know how to explain it. It's better than anything in the world. It's better than any drug you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
Giving back and just being out there actively talking to people and working with people and just going on the streets, man. Just going on the streets,
Yeah.
Whatever we can do to be out there to spread the word is what we're trying to do. In our center, we want to be able to help as many people as we possibly can. Like something that we always talk about is like, no matter what we do, we can't get lost in the finances of this thing, right? Because we're doing God's work. This isn't about, trying to drive a Maserati. This isn't about trying to get Rolex watches and, whatever else to feed ourselves. This is really, truly about doing kingdom work. That's what this is about. We're out there doing kingdom work, and that's what we strive to do.
And that's the difference, right? It's like, the difference in going back to the kingdom work thing and helping that young man is like, this guy didn't ask for help and then we tried to find somebody to refer him to. I mean, we sat with him until we were able to make sure that not only he was going to get cared for, but that he was going to be housed. We stayed with him until we knew for certain that they were going to keep him and be able to stabilize him. Otherwise, we would have left. They'd have discharged him from the ER because he wasn't in crisis. Don't get me started on that. And then what? He's just left right back where he started. How is that not a crisis?
I mean, even the social workers were like, "What are you guys doing here?" We're like, "We're waiting with him." They're like, "What do you mean?"
Kids.
We're like, "We're not going to just lose this kid to the streets."
Yeah.
Because you're going to let him go, and then where's he going to go?
So you ask how, right? Again, being that billboard and being that example is like, we suited up and we showed up and we stayed.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Just loved it. Just loved him.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
And that's what we're going to continue to do.
And today he had lunch at the center and he was eating chicken and he's happy and he's talking and he's smiling,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the good stuff.
That's the good stuff.
That's why we do what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. We can just see him there now. And he's been with us for about a week now. Today will make 5 days or 4 days that he's with us in our care. And man, just seeing him go from, he's also has some psych things going on. He's schizophrenic, but just seeing him stabilized, it's like, and also what came first, right? The chicken or the egg? Were you in a schizophrenic episode that was induced by self-medication or drugs? Or were you schizophrenic and you're trying to use the drugs to mask that schizophrenia, right? And self-medicate.
Yeah.
And so you can't find any of that out until you're actually sober for a length of time. And what's that length of time? There is none, right? If I take a journey, right, and I'm going to go hiking and I'm going to do the Appalachian Trail, right? And I'm like, man, I'm going to do the Appalachian Trail. Well, I'll never do the Appalachian Trail, but let's pretend like I was going to, right?
Yeah.
And I walk 30 days or 30 miles into the Appalachian Trail, right? I can't just turn around and walk 1 mile and be out of that Appalachian Trail. I'm still going to have to walk that 30 miles out of that trail, right? So if I walk in for a year, if I walk in for 5 years, if I'm walking in for 30 years, I got to turn around and I got to walk out of what I went into. And after I walk out of that, that's when you can kind of start to realize what the psych is going on. Like, what's going on with this person? Are you truly a dual diagnosis person? Are you truly schizophrenic, or are you truly clinically depressed, or have clinical anxiety or bipolar disorder? What's really going on? And you can't figure that out until you've been sober for a length of time. There needs to be length of time in there. And just watching him after the 4 or 5 days, I'm like, man, he's starting to clear up.
Yeah.
Since he's been sober, he's been sober. They took him in for 6 days and he's been with us for 4. So he's got about 10 days under him. And every single day I'm meeting with him, I'm like, he's getting better.
Yeah.
He's getting better, one day at a time, which is how we live, but he's getting better one day at a time. And man, it's just such a good feeling to see that.
And the cool thing is too, is like, at least what I believe that we're doing at Path is that 30 miles that he's having to walk back out of that woods, he doesn't have to do alone.
Nah, we're holding his
Because
hand.
he
that's
knows
it right there.
He knows that we're going to be there with him every step of the way because we've shown him that up to this point.
The community.
You know what I
man.
mean?
Yeah, that's
huge.
so cool.
It's huge.
Yeah, and I love that you guys are bringing that and opening that space for community, because we are so in desperate need of it, especially, as the body of just real and raw, vulnerable community. We don't get it very many places. Few and far between. You might find an anonymous group or something that really just has that vulnerability resonate, or you might go into a church and you'll get that, but it's not common, of just that true, raw, hey, I can be myself here 100%. Nobody's going to judge me. And these people are going to walk with me the entire time that I'm here. And I don't have to worry about them leaving me, shunning me, condemning me, nothing. And I can just be me, walk my journey with God, walk my journey with my sobriety or whatever it is that I'm walking, and still be surrounded.
Yeah.
And that's
no matter what.
No matter what. Unconditional
the
love.
The only thing
is
that I
it.
have to do right is not get high or drink.
Yeah.
That's it.
But even if you do, they're not necessarily going to leave,
Right.
That's
even if you do, yes. But the one thing that we do require is you don't drink or get high.
Yeah.
But God's grace doesn't run out,
Yeah.
right? And
it doesn't run out.
If we're meeting people where they're at when they first start, we have to meet people where they're at in recovery too.
Yeah.
Because dude, I was 3 years sober when I had gotten bored with the recovery stuff. I'd stopped going to church because of some stuff that happened in the church, right? That I didn't agree with the pastor and things. And so I stopped doing everything for my recovery and focused on work. And I was doing really well. I had everything that I thought I would never have. I had my own apartment, my own dog, my driver's license, and a car. Now, I did have a blow and go in my car for a little while, right?
I had one of those
but I had
for
a vehicle. I had all these things.
Did you feed the dog?
Of course I did.
Okay, cool. Just making sure.
But I had all these things that I thought were unobtainable, right? Because I was worthless and I'm a drug addict and whatever. And at 3 years sober, having all this stuff I thought I'd never have, I wanted to kill myself. Because I had, again, in recovery, not using or drinking, had become spiritually bankrupt and spiritually disconnected because I stopped making that conscious contact with the very thing that was filling my spirit and keeping me sober. And so that was hard, right? But I was able to hit that spiritual bottom and go back to the same thing that got me sober will keep me sober. And I got reconnected with my spirituality and reconnected with my prayer and working my program and, getting back in the middle of the boat with my fellowship and my recovery community.
Yeah.
And things got better. But again, we have to meet people where they're at, not just in early recovery, but it's a sick and suffering alcoholic and addict in recovery, period. Because there are people, just because you got 20 years clean doesn't mean you're not going to have a bad day. Doesn't mean your kid may not pass, or your grandmother might not, pass of cancer and illness or financial hardships or losing a job or whatever the case may be. Life still happens, but God doesn't change, right? It's for me, am I going to tap into that? And it's hard, right? The longer you stay sober, the easier it is to start taking credit for God and getting in the way of God. But one of my friends, Byron, always says that we only truly lean into God when we experience complete powerlessness. And the way that I live my life a lot of times, even still today at almost 11 years sober, right, is I try to wrestle and make life fit the way I think it should look when God has other plans. And then usually situations happen that humble me, that bring me back to that light, right?
Yeah.
And get me back on the right path. But again, with time doesn't mean anything. For me, it's the days that you have in recovery are fantastic, but for me, quality recovery is about your walk and your relationship with God and how you're carrying yourself. That's what makes the difference. And also, I can't pick and choose what I'm going to do in recovery, right? Like, I'm either all in or I'm all out. I'm a big action-based guy. Again, faith without works is dead. God's going to do what I can't do for myself, but he's not going to do what I can. I've got to do some work too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I love what you said, quality recovery. Like that's a big difference, because I feel like what you say, you can kind of pick and choose and be half in, half out. That may be recovery to some extent, but a quality recovery is something that's really going to change your life.
Am I being a good husband? Am I being a good dad? Am I being a good friend?
Yeah.
Am I being good to myself? Do I love me? Do I love who I am? Right? That's all quality recovery.
Do I feel like I'm worth it?
Do I feel like I'm worthy? Yeah. Am I worthy? I still ask myself that, to be honest, a lot of times. I mean, that's definitely a question that I ask myself.
Yeah.
How do we build self-esteem? Doing esteemable acts. My
Right.
sponsor in recovery is real big on recovery is simple. If you do bad things, you get bad shit. If you do good things, life gets pretty good. It's yin and yang. It's a pretty simple concept. But my selfish and self-centered disease, sometimes I don't know what's right.
Yeah, no, I get that.
That's where the sponsor comes in, though. That's where the friends in recovery come in. Tyler can call me, I call him. We can call you, can call Daniel call that. Like how we actually do this thing is together as a unit, right? It's almost like it reminds me kind of like the story of Moses, right? Like Moses' whole thing was to bring the people to the promised land, right? And so Moses goes and he goes up into the mountains and he talks to God and he writes down these 12 commandments, right, on the stone, and he comes back and he's holding these stones in his hand. Tell me if I'm telling the story wrong. He's holding the stones in his
I thought
hand.
it was 10 commandments.
10
but
commandments, sorry.
We'll go.
I was thinking of 12 traditions. I was thinking of 12 traditions and 12 steps. So he's holding his 10 commandments, right? He's holding 10 commandments in his hand. He comes back. He looks down at the village, right? And all the people are down there and they're worshiping a golden cow. And he just takes these commandments and he breaks them.
Yeah.
Right? And he's so upset at his people, right? And so then he goes down and he realizes, man, people are just people. They're going to do what they do, and ye of little faith aren't going to be able to understand where Moses was for those, I think it was 40 days while he was away, right? Anyway, he puts everything back together again, right? And what it comes down to is the whole village got along, and they were in the promised land. They're at the promised land, right? They're going towards the promised land. And I believe I'm telling this story right. They're going to the promised land, and then Moses gets told, look, you're not going to be able to go with your people. And Moses ended up going back into his tent and he died there, right? But the people made it to the promised land. And the promised land is us just living together in peace and in harmony.
Yeah.
That's the promised land for me. That's like what I want. I want to be able to call my brothers, call my sisters, call my friends, call the people who are really, truly working that solid program of action and quality, and get my hope and faith just from them sometimes if I have to. You know, I can't have the sponsor that's taking me to strip clubs,
Yeah,
you know, especially not in my 40s, maybe my 20s. I mean, it was. No, but I can't have that sponsor that's doing those things, because that's not the righteous steps to take. That's not what God wants. God wants us to live this whole life, this spiritual life, this giving, kind, loving, generous, you know, and God is so forgiving, man. He is so forgiving. He's just the most forgiving, loving. And right now is the time. The time is now.
Yeah.
Like, things are happening now spiritually. We are truly in a spiritual war right now. And I don't mean to go off topic, but like,
no, it's okay.
I'm Jewish. You know, I was Jewish my whole life. I was raised Jewish. Going to my aunt's house, he had 2 separate refrigerators, you know, because they were kosher. And my uncle's a rabbi in Israel. And it wasn't only until about a year and a half ago that I actually found Jesus, and that Jesus came to me. And Jesus, you know, if my father even saw this episode and saw me talking about Jesus, it would just crush his heart. You know, my mom's a little more open, but it would just crush him, you know? So I can't even talk to my parents about this. And when I found him, when he found me, I don't know exactly what happened, but I was standing on my back porch. It was 5:30. The sun had just broken over the hills of Goodlettsville, and it just washed me, man. Jesus just washed me in his blood. And by 5:30 or 6 a.m. that morning, I had met a friend down at the lake to baptize me in front of my neighbors and my daughter and my wife. And I got baptized with about 7 people. I went to the creek, but I was a little too fat to get dunked under the water at the creek. It was too shallow. So we ended up having to go to a lake. But I got baptized in a lake that same morning that I found God. So the time is now. You know, I truly believe, because right now, people like me who are Jews their whole life, I am still a Jew, obviously. Jesus was a Jew. But that have now found Jesus, like, he's reaching out right now more profound than ever before. And when those skies part, like, I want to feel like at least I've done enough to go up there, because he's already prepared the seat for me. And it's my job here to do whatever I can and be as righteous as I can. And I'm not a righteous man, and I do make mistakes all the time, and I'm not perfect. And none of this should be taken like that, because, man, if you talk to my wife, she'll tell you plenty of things that I do wrong. You know, in my mind, I'm perfect, but no, I'm joking. No, but there's plenty of things that I do wrong to this day that I'll continue to make mistakes. But my God is loving, and my God is forgiving. You know, and as long as I recognize him and I try to make him a little bit of change, you know, day at a time. Yeah. And it's progress, not perfection. And I just try to live one day at a time. And each day that I try to live, I try my hardest to do the right thing, no matter what that may be. Whether that's, you know, Tyler calling out because he's sick and I got to cover a load, but me being like, Tyler, it's okay. Like, not making people feel a certain way, because I know what I can do as a human being. I'm just using you as an example, but it could be anybody, you know, like, it could be anybody that's doing these things. But when these things happen, instead of being the old Bram and being like, dude, suck it up, get into work, I need you today, and making that person feel bad, even though I know that they literally don't feel good, you know, that there's some literally wrong. Like, I know Tyler would never call out of work if there wasn't something literally wrong, right?
Would you, Tyler?
Would you, Tyler? Good question. Actually, let's stop right there.
Plead the fifth.
Nah, he wouldn't. And so, like, but inside me, there's still that person, right, that wants to be like, come on, bro, suck it up. Yeah. Like, come into work. That person still lives in there, but that's not godly. That's not who God is. Yeah. Right? Because I know that he's not there for because he can't be there. You know what I mean? And so I got to still fight that every day. So I'm not perfect by any means, you know, and nobody is. None of us are perfect. Daniel's not perfect. Tyler's not perfect. The guy controlling the volume and the sound over there is not perfect. You know what I mean? Nobody is perfect. It doesn't matter who you are. The only person that was perfect that ever walked this earth was Jesus. You know, and that was it. And whether it's Jesus, God, a soda machine, it doesn't matter what it is. Just find something greater than yourself. Yeah. Right? And if you can find something that's greater than yourself, then you too can be restored to sanity. But it all starts with finding that higher power, whatever that higher power may be. And that's what we foster and we want to foster. And you can come into our program no matter, I don't care if you don't believe in anything at all and you're an atheist, you're still welcome into our program. It's not a faith-based program. But if you can work some steps and find that higher power, then you have a lot better chance of long-term sobriety than the chronic relapser does, who doesn't work those steps and who doesn't find that higher power. And that's just a fact.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's a little bit conflicting because of just my church brain, right? Because being in the evangelical, you don't hear that, what you just said, of allowing somebody to choose something different than what you know. Because, anytime you go to church, you hear, well, we got to make sure that we're ministering and pointing people to God and pointing people to Jesus, which I think is absolutely what we should do. You know what I mean? But I think sometimes we don't always realize that there's a time and a place.
Yes.
That maybe they're just not ready.
No. Yeah.
They're not ready for it. And I think it goes to what Jesus asked that the paralytic man. He said, do you want to be well? So not everybody's there yet. Not everybody wants to be well yet. So I just love the fact that you're open to allowing people to be who they are, where they are in their journey, and not putting any kind of label or stigma on them.
Not at all. Yeah.
Just loving them exactly where they are.
I was a Jew when I am a Jew, and if I would have gotten into recovery when I was 21, and I really like that, the seed was planted when I was very young, 13 or 14, but when I was 21 and ready to take this serious, if the owner of the place that I went through at that time, and he was a father, right? He was a priest. If he would have told me, you have to believe in Jesus, I don't know where I'd be right now. I just don't know where I'd be right now.
Yeah.
It took me 43 years to find Jesus. It took me 43 years. And I'm actually grateful. I'm super grateful to be where I'm at right now because my bread is not leavened. Yeah. I'm still just a matzah. But my bread is not leavened. I don't have to worry about taking those stigmatic things that you were just talking about out of that already leavened bread. I can meet people where they're at and I can understand where they're at because my bread is still just filling and leavening. And that's kind of where I am.
That's why I think the days don't matter, right? Because there's no time stamp on when you and God are going to be tight, right? It's just like it's my journey and it takes what it takes to get me to recovery. It takes what it takes for me to sustain recovery and build a relationship with God. Some people, they have a white light experience and they're tight with God right from the get-go. For me, it took some time and it took some trial and error and it took praying to a Coke machine and making mistakes, but also keeping an open mind and hearing God use people to explain to me the message of hope and stuff to where I was able to receive it and see it. But again, the time doesn't matter. God's going to meet us where we're at when we're ready. And who am I to dictate when somebody's, whether they're 43 and a Jew or whatever the case may be, this is God's story being written, not mine, and that can be hard to swallow sometimes. But if there was like this easy, perfect way, then we would just hit the switch. There would be no addiction problems. Everybody would be right with Jesus, and we wouldn't be sitting here right now. Yeah.
Amen. Well, this verse keeps coming to my mind, and I think it's great, and I think it really fits what you all are doing. It says, in the same way we had a fond affection for you and were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own lives, because you have become very dear to us, And so I think what you both are doing, what everyone in your path is doing is just commendable, and it's honorable, and it's loving. And it's so cool, man. I'm so glad to see you guys blazing a trail, and not only in the Christian world for approaching, faith from a little different perspective, but in the recovery world, of saying, hey, we're not going to stick to the same patterns and rigidity that you have always done, trying to fit everybody in your box. I think that's amazing what you guys are doing. I'm so happy that we met. That was definitely a God moment. I'd like for people listening to the episode here to be able to reach out to you guys. And I want to know want them to know what the best way to do that is. So do you have information that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, you could always go to our Facebook page, Path Recovery. Our website is pathrecoverytn.com.
I'll put it in the info for those who...
Perfect.
Yeah.
And the number is 615-946-6992. And you could reach me or Tyler 24/7. I really don't care if you want to come into Path Recovery or not. You can just call and say hello.
Yeah.
You know, like there's no, like if you want to talk, if you need somebody, if you need help, like if you need anything at all, like we are here. We're here. We're not going anywhere, you know, and whether it doesn't matter what it is, whether you have insurance, whether you don't have insurance, whether you want to go into recovery, whether you don't want to go into recovery, but you just need someone to talk to. If you're thinking about going into recovery, but you're just not quite sure, if whatever the case may be, if you're struggling, if it's porn, if it's gambling, if it's, what else?
You name it.
Any addiction, food, right? Whatever it may be. Just
even-
call us, man. Like we're here to talk to you as people, as humans.
Yeah. What about like just for even family members who maybe haven't
Family
somebody struggling?
family members. If you need, you know, we do travel and do interventions. But it's like, I don't want that only to be about this, right? Like, yeah, we're sponsoring this episode and yeah, but that's not really what it is. Like, we're really just in this to do kingdom work, and kingdom work has zero boundaries. So
Yeah,
whoever you
let's
are,
go.
whether you're a parent, a friend, none of that matters, right? What matters is that there's two guys here that have probably been through it. If not, we definitely know someone who's been through it that are here and just willing to talk to you, you know, and that's it. We can find solutions, whatever solutions may be. Like there's always a solution for everything. But I guess my point is we're in this for the people, and we're here to support the people. We're here to do kingdom work, and that has zero boundaries and zero time limits. We don't clock out at 5 o'clock. You know, me and Tyler, we work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're never going to stop doing that.
Makes me think of you guys heard of the starfish story?
No.
But the starfish story is where there's a girl walking down the beach, right? And there's starfish that got all washed up to shore. And so she's throwing these starfish one at a time back into the ocean. And this old man walks up and he's like, "What are you doing? You're never going to save all of those starfish." And she picked up another one and threw it in the ocean. And she said, "Well, I saved that one." And I feel like during this conversation, I think one of the first questions you asked was like, or maybe not that you asked, but what are we going to do different in terms of what we offer as a treatment center? And I think that what we're going to do different is we're going to suit up and show up, and we're going to be with you every step of the way. And we may not be able to help everyone, but we can help the 25-year-old man who showed up out of the blue asking for help, you know, that didn't even know who we were, or that we were a treatment center, but knew that we loved him because Bram and the team was, every time he walked by, we were saying hi to him, asking him if he needed help. That's the difference, is we can't help everyone, but we can help that one. And I can, not to speak on his behalf, but I could probably say that just us sitting with him was probably some of the most impactful stuff that's ever going to happen to him. And I know it's that kind of stuff that attracted me to recovery. People showing up and they were willing to sit with me till the very end.
Amen. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you. We're out of time, but I just want to really just thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like you said, not just for the sponsorship. I mean, that's one thing aside, but your heart for people.
Yeah, that's what we're in it for.
Just immense. And I love that you know how to love your neighbor. So thank you for what you do. If there's anybody, if you got questions, I'll put the info in the comment section below, the info section below. You can reach out to me if you need the same thing. I'm open as well. You know, just say, hey, if I need help, I need to get somewhere, I'll connect you with these guys or whoever we need to connect you with that fits what you need in that moment. You know, we'll do that. So make sure you look below. Check out pathrecoverytn.com and check out the shop.thevisionpodcast.com. Get some of these fire hoodies, man. It's winter time's coming up.
Hoodies
Let's
are
go.
fire, dude.
Yeah, let's go. And then go to thevisionpodcast.com. You can keep up with us. Throw your email in there. check out any updates. We got an ebook dropping and some other stuff in the works. So stay tuned for that, and we'll catch you next time.
Subscribe, like, share the vision.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
We're breaking down walls, tearing apart the lies. Together we'll stand, watch the whole